Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another session of the Symposium Filaments of the Atlantic Heritage, put forth by the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute at California State University, Fresno. It's been a marathon since last Wednesday with two sessions and some days three. And today we had three sessions, two in the morning, one actually at 10 o'clock. The mayor of Angra, Professor Almenezes, was our guest. And at 12 o'clock, we had a fascinating conversation with six young Azorians, four of them living in the Azores and two of them living here in the United States, which brought a lot of light, shed a lot of light on a lot of things as far as we kind of connect as kind of a sub theme for this event, which is connecting our passion for the Azores and thus creating the future for the Azorian diaspora in the United States of America. I want to thank, first and foremost, the four distinguished panelists that we have here today. We are very happy that they took time from their schedules to say yes and to be with us. We'll try to keep this to about an hour. I can't promise that, though. So we might have to go a little bit more than an hour. And I want to thank all of you who are joining us on the webinar and those who are joining us as well on social media. And again, do use the chat if you have any questions or any comments about anything that we discuss. The theme here for this session is called actually the Zelish. And why the Zelish? My four guests know it very well, but those of you who might be following and some of the students that are also on the Zoom webinar, when we ask someone where you're from, the Zelish, and or if we ask, are you Portuguese? Yes. Where's your family from? The Zelish. And so that's our response. We're from the islands. It doesn't make any difference which one we're from, although we're partial to the one we were born in, but that's what we identify with, and all of us were born there, and so that's why we have the Zelish, and then as a subtitle, the Azorian identity. So an identity that's tied to those islands here in the United States. I also want to acknowledge, of course, our sponsors and thank Miguel Vaz. I want to acknowledge his presence just because it's after midnight in Lisbon and he is on as an attendee. And if he falls asleep, he's more than excused if he falls asleep. But I want to acknowledge before that happens. I'm sure he won't, though. So thanks, Miguel. Miguel's attended every single workshop, and that is really dedication from him. And that shows that indeed, as I keep on saying, Miguel is the umbilical cord between FLAD and the Azorian communities and the Portuguese communities in the United States of America and all the work that FLAD does. So our guests are Maria Hortência-Silveira, Richard Machado, Laurinda Clemente, and Duarte Silva, Professor Duarte Silva, and we are going to, we're going to have basically four major questions that we're going to talk about. First and foremost, I'm going to ask them to take about 2 or 3 minutes, and they could actually take probably 15 to 20 with their curriculums, but I'm going to ask them for 2 to 3 minutes to tell us a little bit about themselves. Just a brief intro, who they are and their connection to the Azores as far as what island they're from and when they immigrated to America, and just a little bit about their family history in a couple of minutes. And I'll start with Maria Hortência-Silveira. And there's a reason for this. It's because Pico is the tallest island in the Azores. And so we're going to go by topography here. So Maria Hortência.
Definitely the tallest. And very beautiful, but all the islands are beautiful. Yes, I was born and raised in the island of Pico, immigrated to the United States in 1967 with my father and my brother in pursuit of the American dream, like most of us. It was tough at first, but turned out to have been a beautiful journey. Learned to love America, but still very much in love with the Azores, the Zelish, of course. And I do visit the Azores every year. Last year, obviously, for obvious reasons, we didn't go. But still very much connected with the islands, particularly Pico, of course. And I have to say that even though I love America and I've made it my home, when I go to Pico, I totally feel at home. Azores. And when you say that, it's almost like I remember when I started grammar school in the Azores that the smallest word the teacher told us, but that filled your mouth was the word mine. And I think when I say Pico, that happens as well. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
Professor, for inviting me. And it's a pleasure to be here. I've been excited, looking forward to this.
We're excited to have you. And thank you so much, Maria Ortiz. Maria Ortiz said she came in 1967. She had to be less than a year old. And now we are going to turn to Richard Machado from one of and I put my neck out all the time. I don't have a problem with that. It is my beautiful place in the Azores that I love. I love all of the islands, but I think Florida is very, very, very beautiful. With all due respect, Maria Ortiz, Pico is my second favorite. And so, and we'll get to Terceira, which is my home island, like a few after. Richard Machado. Richard, thank you again for joining us, and a little bit the same thing.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be part of this wonderful group and to share some of our background in the Azores. I was born in a small village of Fugenzinha, right at the most western point of Flores, which is the most western island of the Azores, closest to the United States. So we didn't have much to look at except a lot of ocean and the American continent beyond that. But our family, my father had come to this country a couple of times back and forth, first when he was single, and then after he was married, had 5 children. He and my mother had 5 children, almost one after the other. And then he spent time here during World War II. And it was after his return that there was a surprise. My twin sister and I were born. So it went from 5 children to 7 almost immediately. And I think my dad had the idea of coming back again, which they did in those days, come make some money, go buy more land, take care of the family. But in that case, what we ended up doing was, I think my mother kind of put her foot down and said, hey, no, if you go, we're all going this time. So we immigrated here. My father had only one sister living in Fresno. So naturally, he wanted the family to be near family. So we came to, I was only 2 years of age when I came, and we worked in agriculture. Father milked cows. We worked in the fields. Of course, as a young child at that age, I didn't really participate in that. My 2 older sisters used to rotate to take care of us while the family went out to work. So I got some great benefit of being in that younger group. And but every night and until the age of 5, when I went to kindergarten, I didn't speak a word of English. It was only Portuguese at home. And we continued that until my mother passed. And so we came to Fresno. Our family stayed in the area. We participated in activities, got Americanized like Maria was saying she did. And I'm sure all of us. I went my sister and I, twin sister and I, both went to college, graduated. She became a school teacher. I worked in a variety of different occupations, but my background and focus had always been in agriculture. And I was very fortunate to be involved in starting up a very successful agricultural company that we have today.
Indeed, very, very successful, and congratulations. And after a few years also in public service as well at a state level. We thank you, Richard. And next, Laurinda Clemente. I won't tell you, I won't classify your island, Laurinda. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, Dinesh, thank you so much for the invitation. And it is an honor to be part of this panel. So I was born in San Miguel Azores, Vila Franca do Campo specifically. My parents immigrated to the United States, Somerville, Massachusetts, when I was 11 and a half. All of my mother's family was here. My father's family remains in San Miguel. I integrated into American society quite well, and was really focused on succeeding and becoming a proud Portuguese American, right? So I maintained connection with my Portuguese roots. Like my whole career has been in banking, and I did start my career at the Portuguese Cambridge Credit Union, which then led me to become Miss of Portugal. That's a long story, but that certainly enabled me to maintain my roots. So it's an amazing journey, and that more recently, I have become obsessed, just fallen in love again with being Portuguese and Azorian. So this is very timely.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Professor Duarte Silva.
Denise, first I want to thank you for the honor of inviting me to be a part of this panel, and also want to congratulate you for the incredible chapter of Filaments. I participated in the Filaments, when they were first beginning in the last century, believe it or not. And this year's Filaments has been a 21st century version of those Filaments, because I have watched probably 90% of them. I missed today's because I was traveling. But they've been so enriching, and the perspectives have been so different, and I've gained so much for it. So thank you for the Filaments, and thank you for the invitation here today. I am from São Jorge, and I want to know where Denise ranks São Jorge.
Number three.
I'm now by fourth in the ranking.
No, number three. It surpasses São Miguel to me. I'm sorry.
I immigrated, from São Jorge in 1966 at the age of 14. I was raised in Norte Grande. Feijão do Ouvidor is a corresponding feijão to that freguesia. And we arrived in the United States at the end of the summer of 1966. I was 14. I had basically just completed elementary school, the sort of basic 4 years of education. And I was in what they called the prep for the admission to the university. And we left in June, and I was just, finishing that prep course to enter the university, and arrived in the United States without speaking a word of English. I was placed in 4th grade at the age of 14. And then from there, was promoted to 5th and 6th and 8th grade, and then into high school. Very much right from the beginning, I really liked the American school system. It was so much more dynamic than the school system that I had come from. So I was perfectly happy to be in 4th grade, because my math skills were much higher than those 4th graders, and I was teaching them math and so forth. But we were welcomed into America, or California, by my mom's family. My mom's parents and her other 6 siblings had immigrated to the United States 15 years prior. So they had been here for 15 years. My mom elected to be married and not join the family when they immigrated. So, all of them really welcomed us with open arms. My cousins were a big source of support. And then the school system, I went to a very small country school. The total school population was about 70 students. So it was an incredible beginning of my educational system. I went on to become a teacher, and then taught high school for 8 years, probably the golden years of my entire career, even though I very much enjoyed my 31 years at Stanford, and now emeritus, still continue to be involved. But education has been my life, and it started in the Azores and continues here today.
Thank you so much, Duarte. Thank you for the kind words as well. And before I continue, I just have to say that I was looking at Richard's bookcase, and I know this is a proud Florentine. He has 2 books there, because I can tell books about 100 miles away. He has 60 Acres in the Barn and Home is an Island from Alfred Lewis. Wonderful. One of my heroes, as you know, Richard. Thank you for doing that.
Somehow they just happened to show up on that.
That's right. That's right. They did. Let's take a few questions, and we're going to, again, spend a few minutes on each one of these. And one of the first questions I'd like to get your thoughts on, and we'll start in a different manner this time. We'll move around. Is how has the Azorian identity basically shaped who you are? And if you look back at, so most of you came very young. All of you actually came very young, and so whether you came at 2 or 14, what's 2 or 3 elements when you reflect upon who you are, an American with Azorian roots? What 2 or 3 elements can you look back and say, I think these were important things in shaping me and who I am and the Azorian identity that I'll have today? And I'm going to start with Richard this time.
Well, I gave some thought to that, and I think there was a couple of elements. I think certainly and foremost was a sense of family, how important the family was, how strong it was in shaping and helping one another. And that continued, not from only our roots, but continued as the family came here, particularly to a new land. We needed support from one another, not only our immediate family, but as I said, my father had a sister who was here, had been here before, and her just, like in Duarte's case, where the family welcomed us, those first cousins and nieces, and that all welcomed us, made our life very easy. So that certainly shaped, I think, my sense of family, and it is today. I think religiously, the same thing. I think my faith, that I have, it's a big part of my life, was that we were Catholic. I don't know that I would have been Catholic had it not been, for my Azorian background, the strong faith that still exists in the islands. Every time I go, and I visited virtually every single island, been to many of the freguesias, the thing that has always impressed me was one of the first things that was built were those churches in very difficult times, bringing materials in that had to be brought in by ship. But that was the number one thing. And so that kind of shaped my life on how I, today, I still participate very strongly in our faith identity. It also, I think, registered the work ethic that came from the work that people had to do, hard physical work in the Azores, that transferred here. And even though some of our work wasn't always as strenuous and as physical as it was then, the work ethic was instilled in us. And I think, again, lastly, would be the food culture, the great foods, the festas, the things that we grew up with, or all played parts in that. And for me, even as I learned some leadership skills as a young person, very active in the Portuguese lodges, besides just the festas, my cousins were and was state president of the IDES. I became one of the first state youth presidents at 17 for the IDES. Those all formed leadership skills, all attributed to that.
Fantastic. And Maria Hortensia, so the same question. What's looking back, what 2 or 3 elements can you say that's shaped your Azorian identity in America?
Very definitely values, the values of people, the values of things, and the value of God in your life. Work ethic, definitely, and pride in what you did. I worked for a local company, and the only employer that I worked for, a multi-billion-dollar company, currently with 12,000 employees. And so with the values, the work ethic, and the loyalty that we're taught in the Azores, to be loyal to those that take care of you, and to be obviously work hard and do a good job the first time. I started in the company in the factory, and actually worked there in the summer while I was in high school and into university. And so I went from working in the factory to becoming vice president of human resources and labor relations, responsible for 8,000 people out of the 12,000 employees in multiple states, negotiated 9 contracts with 7 different unions in multiple states. So values, work ethic, loyalty, and definitely love for God, knowing that there's a supreme being that guides you, and always had in my life and always asked for guidance. So that came also from my ancestors, from being Azorian, because that was really very high in our books and our family and our neighbors and all the people that I dealt with that I remember. Those values were very important.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Indeed, adding to the some of the themes and a few more. And it's interesting how they all intertwine. Duarte.
Well, there is no question in my mind that my upbringing in the Azores to the age of 14 continues to be the moral compass for my personal life, as well as my moral compass for how I relate to others. And specifically, I believe that growing up in the Azores, one of the elements that I reflected on is determination. Like Laurinda, I was determined, to succeed in my school. I'm still determined to succeed in any project that I engage in. And so that determination that I believe I acquired as a child and later on as an adolescent in the Azores, because we were all determined, around everyone around us and everyone, certainly my age, we were determined to succeed. And when, the decision was to immigrate to the United States and arriving here, there was a strong sense of determination to succeed, to make a life here and to, be the best you could be. So that determination. Along with that, being raised in the Azores also provided me with a sense of resiliency. I tend to be a resilient person and always face, obstacles and challenges with courage. And I believe that goes back to, the Azores. There were a lot of challenges back in the, 50s and the 60s. There were a lot of challenges that Azorians, faced. My parents, our neighbors, and so forth. So we develop a sense of resiliency that still accompanies me today. I always, like I said, there's a crisis and I am able to move through it. And I believe it's my grounding in that culture that gives me the courage, to move on and look for solutions in the most adverse, times. And the third one, perhaps, is collaboration. I tend to have a collaborative spirit. And when I was growing up in the Azores, I was 14, I was aware. And basically the Azores at that time, not today, but at that time, it was a shared economy. Everyone was collaborating with each other, taking care of each other, sharing in the tasks. One day everyone would harvest someone's corn. The next day everyone was harvesting everyone's grapes. The following day everyone was harvesting the wheat crop and so forth. So today, when I look back, I really believe, every time someone introduces me, they always sort of go back to, that I am a collaborator and an enabler. And I believe that was, rooted in me, in my upbringing in the Azores. So those are the three that come to mind as I reflect on this question.
And they're excellent. And Laurinda. Lots of the things have been taken, but I think you can add to it.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's very true. Yes, and I agree with everything that's been said. And as Bart was saying, resiliency. And I was thinking, you took my word, my resilience. But that is so true. They're islands, right? They're small places. You have to be resilient. There's only there's so many things that you have to do to help your parents. Your parents really rely on you. There's a lot to do and not a lot of money. And in my case, yes, my parents have always relied on me, even though I was a middle child there and here, even more here. And so solving problems for me was natural. Like I never panicked. I was used to having to solve problems from as a young child. I had to, do things, take care of, help take care of my brothers, go pick up the bread, whatever. That was so I believe that was just an everyday thing, and I certainly believe that has added to my success. Faith, God is everywhere. Thank God, you know. You are raised with this amazing beauty that, of course, initially as a child you take for granted, but now you go back. Certainly, I go back and I see all these rainbows that appear just everywhere, and I say, oh my God, I was born in paradise. I didn't even, you know, this is paradise, and God is everywhere. And there's, you know, the Sunday dinners, you know, and you know, you have dinner every night, but especially Sunday, and the pride, no matter how poor, the pride that parents have in their kids. And if you notice the pictures, even though, you know, 50 something years ago, people were not rich, those kids always clean. Their hairs, their bows in their hairs, you know, as pessoas tinham orgulho, and it's different than pride, orgulho, e respeito, e consideração. So having pride and consideration and kindness, because everybody knows each other. So you treat one another with courtesy. You know, you're probably like, it's your faraway cousin or something, but everyone knows each other. And so kids are always polite. I know I was always polite. I still to this day, I have trouble calling someone by their name if they're older than me. I always say, snora, you know, Mr., Mrs. And I still, that's what feels like natural for me. And that's the way I taught my daughter. So I echo what you have all said, and I do believe that that family unit, that pride, that faith, and basically being instilled in just being used to doing what needs to get done, and you don't even think about it, you just do it. That really helps you succeed as an adult. I realize that now more than ever. Kids that have life too easy panic when there's a problem that comes their way. And as teachers, you probably have come across that. Right?
Thank you, Laurinda, indeed. And I see kind of a common theme as well, which is with most of you, which is the word solidarity. And it reminds me of, you know, which actually 60 Acres in the Barn talks about that quite a bit, and so does Alfred in his first novel as well. But a lot of the theme in the Azorian literature, whether it's Alan Oliveira or Alfred Lewis or many others from the island of Pico, Dias de Melo, etc., is that the solidarity, as Dr. Eduardo Mayon Dias once said, you know, it seems like in the Azores, being nice to your neighbor, helping your neighbor out, is just not being nice to them. It's a way of life. It's just what you do, as Duarte and all of you mentioned one way or another. The next question would be, what does it mean to be an Azorian in America? So we have these determination, this resiliency, this work ethic, family, religion, solidarity, all of the different themes that were exposed by all of you in one way or another. But what does it mean to be an Azorian in America? And how have the continued visits that most of you, I think all of you in one way or another, some probably more than others, but the continued visits to the islands have shaped your views of this Azorian identity, you know, whether you're there or whether you are here. And so my question in the aspect, because in the diaspora, in the Azorian diaspora in North America, and of course mainly here in the United States, there are folks who have never been back. You know, there are folks who immigrated at the age of 2 or 3, and especially an older generation has passed. They've never gone back. Those who immigrated in the early 1900s and late 19th century as well. Do you feel that, first of all, you know, what does it mean to you being an Azorian in America? And second of all, do you feel that this shaping of your identity that you have so eloquently stated has to do with these trips that probably weren't as often in the beginning? I don't think they were. That's the way it usually was. The immigrant came here, and it's not like they went back 2 years later, but have probably become a little bit more frequent lately in the last maybe 10, 15, 20 years. So, and I'm going to start with Duarte on this question.
That's because I go.
It's probably, because you go every day, yeah. A couple times.
In my mind, I do.
Almost every day, yes.
Physically, once or twice a year, but absolutely. As far as being Azorian in America, I've always felt that it's a special way of being, and certainly never less than. If anything, probably more than. I've always understood that concept that when you are an Azorian, Portuguese, Azorian in America, you have something plus. It's a value added way of being in the United States. And of course, being an educator, I've interacted with a lot of other cultures, and it's amazing because my identity and my cultural repertoire now is sort of a summary of all the cultures that I come in contact with on a daily basis, along with your neighbors, but certainly in the classroom. And I created a space where every student would, have the opportunity to share all the elements of his or her culture. So I've acquired so much of the cultures, around me, but always, because I believe being an Azorian, I was predisposed to that. I had sort of like, I knew that there was something beyond, your Anglo culture to be together. And, when I was in high school, I created a program in which every freshman would go through a multicultural course, to expand their horizons and learn about other cultures and cultures in contact. When I am in the Azores, my identity is, sort of, there's a local identity, and you go back, and people remember you. Some of them remember you because some of my peers never left, and as a teenager, as well as some of my mentors, those who taught me catechism at church, and some of my former teachers and so forth. So, but it's interesting enough also because your identity is very dynamic, and I am very aware that it has changed over time. And sometimes when I am in the Azores, and this is going to sound a little strange, I feel less Azorian because not only because I am perceived now as being an American or a Californian, but my mindset is different. I react to the news a little different. I react to certain issues that the community is experiencing with different eyes, with a different mindset. And there's my peers, the individuals that went to school with me, and they see the world, they see the issue, they react to the news in a completely different way. So it makes me aware that I am not the same person or have sort of a monotonous, mindset, and certainly not the mindset that when I left the Azores. And so I react with an expanded or maybe narrower, sometimes I'm not sure, kind of a perspective, to those issues. And my thinking is different. And so it's amazing, there I am in the Azores, experiencing and loving every moment and interacting with individuals. Yet I do, look at things differently. My lenses are not the same as my peers who have never left the island, or some of my, mentors and so forth and so on. So it's sort of a strange way. As far as the American identity, I really feel that to be understood, you really have to take those who are closest to you. And for that reason, I took my boss from Stanford to the Azores for 2 weeks because I felt that he needed to understand me in a way that I was and how I went about things. And I also took some of my colleagues and took some of my closest friends because I really believe that you have to experience it, because obviously I do interact with others in a sort of a different way. And individuals that I took and they spent time, visiting different islands and interacting with the people, they came back and said, "Oh, now I understand why you do X, Y, and Z." So it's a mixture of identity and being perceived to have a different identity.
Indeed. Yeah, fascinating thoughts, all of them. And I'll turn to Laurinda this time. And the same question, Laurinda, and your continuing visits to the Azores. Have they helped as well, as Duarte said. Have they kind of helped shape that identity, or would you be the same have the same awareness of Azorian identity had you never gone back, 40 years later?
Yeah. Oh no, I'm so glad I've been going back. And you're right, Dinesh. I was going less, and again, I was busy with my career. And of course, my visits have increased tremendously over the last 3 years. What Duarte says is so true, because here, we'll say, well, I'm Portuguese, I'm from the Azores, but when I'm in the Azores, I don't really feel like an Azorian. I feel more like an American because, in fact, we were raised here. I came when I was 11. I'm now 50. And Duarte came when he was 14. So the fact is, this has been our home. And I must say, I feel very, very comfortable in the United States. This is my home. And this feels more like my home now than the Azores. Although my longing, aquela saudade, is increasing. And I now, have a dream, a wish to live there part-time, half the year there, half the year here. So that's how much in love I am again with the Azores. But not only myself, Azores is changing like Portugal. People, a lot of, new nationalities are coming in. So I believe that's going to be changing a lot. But in any event, what Duarte said is exactly how I feel here. I think of myself as, a Portuguese Azorian American, and when I'm in the Azores, I think of myself as an American. So it's complicated.
No, it is. It
That's
is
how I feel.
complicated. It is complicated. Richard, your thoughts on that?
Well, I made my first visit probably from the time that I left as a young child. I made my first visit about 25 years ago, and I think I've gone virtually every year. The last 5 years prior to 2020, I was going twice a year, and so it was a great connection for me. And what it means to me was, I think it strengthened my my whole personality about and who we are, like being Portuguese to begin with, being Azorian. It's not like a lot of Americans or what they call the Heinz 57. They're not quite sure where they are, but we have a very strong identity. And even more granular for me when I'm there is being a Florentine. From Flores, that's the ultimate, okay? And but those visits have been, again, they've strengthened that the bond to the islands. They've given me a place and to even share some of the values that we have in the U.S. And I'm always surprised at what we don't think. I think I find more of those even in my small village of Fajanzinha. I find that people so well informed about the politics of the government of this country more so than people who are here. They're astute. They read, and that's always been characteristic, I think, of all of the Azore Islands. Education had always been a big thing. In addition to the churches that I mentioned earlier, as one of the first things being built, schools were right there with them to teach and educate. So they knew that. When I'm here, I think I feel a connect for those trips that give me a link to history, a history that goes back 500 years globally. We talked about, as Duarte mentioned, with some of his the cultural students they've had, the Portuguese were practically in every one of those countries at one time during the age of discovery. What they brought to the table, that sense of spirit and understanding is there. And I too, as Duarte mentioned, sharing those Azores with my non-Azorian friends. My closest friend is Armenian. And I took him there a couple of years ago, and he instantly fell in love with that. And I have since been able to share a visit to Armenia, to Yerevan, and you see that the warmth and the family ties, all those strengths are something pretty universal. But for us, I think going back, I just can't wait. And I've had the good fortune and opportunity to be able to share that with my daughters. I have 3 daughters. I've taken them before. We had a big family trip planned in 2020, leaving San Francisco for Lisbon on the new TAPS direct flight. Well, that all went sideways in June the 14th on our schedule, although I had taken that trip before. But getting there is a lot easier now. SATA is one thing. And I think, Denise, you've been in my office or you've seen my replica airplane of SATA. That's when you asked me what that meant or why I had it there, I said, well, it always meant to me is that if when I'm having a really tough day, I just look up at that aircraft SATA, and I could think I could be waiting for a SATA flight, so it lightens up my day, and so that's and I think you were there when I shared that with you as to why I had it on there. But those regular relationships and going back and forth, it just strengthens all of us.
Indeed, and it's that is why we have to have better transportation between the Azores and communities, and California especially, because we have to afford that opportunity to more and more Azorians. Maria Hortensia, I know that you go back quite frequently. I think you've bought every single house that's available in Pico, and so that wasn't occupied at one time. And the good thing about it, there's 5 of us here, including yourself, of course, you in your beautiful home. But there's if each and every one of us 4 decides to go to Pico anytime soon, we each can have our own house and owned by Maria Hortensia. So tell me a little bit about, of course, first of all, your Azorian identity, which I know is very strong, but what does it mean for you to be Azorian American and have these constant contacts with the Azores, even though you came at a very young age? Have they helped you to maintain the Azorianness in America?
Certainly has helped, but I always was very Azorian. And coming to America, looking at my parents at 40 years old, picking up their daughter and their son and going to a country that they don't know what was, they didn't know much about it, other than we did have some friends that came back and they were all wearing new clothes and new shoes, and they had wonderful perfumes and different, dressed different, talk different. So it's a big change. And so, but I look at it that, yeah, it is a big change, and things have changed, but it's almost like the more you change, the more things stay the same. We still eat the Azorian foods. We still go to churches. They're built locally, and we go to mass that is mass is in Portuguese, and almost everyone at mass is Portuguese. We drink the Portuguese wine. My father made wine just like he did over there until recently. The desserts are the same. Although I have a lot of American friends, because I love America, and this is my home, I spend most of my time with Portuguese people. And so it's like, we socialize with mostly Azorian people, and it's like, the more you change, the more it stays the same. I'm talking about here. Now, going to the Azores, yes, definitely. When I go to the Azores, I have to say that even though this is my home, when I go to the Azores, I really feel my roots, and I really feel at home there. Do I feel like I'm an American when I'm there? I'm not sure. Maybe I do, but I do feel different. The speed is different. Our oceans, our airs, our passarinhos, and our food, everything is our friends. But it is different. In this country, it's almost like, you can do anything you want. You set your mind to it, you can do it. You have a problem. No, it's not a problem. Let's look at it as an opportunity. Come up with a solution. And you hear quite a bit. When I go there, there's one word that sticks out in my mind always: complicado. And so I feel like it's different because things are slower, but it is why we love to go there, because things are slower. But obviously, it is different. It is different, but it's where we came from, and we always go back for a reason, even though it is different. We love it so much, and it's so beautiful that there's something that pulls us. There is not a time that I go to the Azores, that when I land, that I don't have tears in my eyes. Every time I land on Pico, not in Terceira or São Miguel, I'm just being, but when I land in Pico, there's tears that come down my face. It's really home. It's where, like, you belong there.
Indeed, yeah, of course, there's something magical about that and one comes from. But I have to say that independently where I land, I do feel it's different when you land in the Azores. And I feel that difference between the Azores and mainland Portugal, although I love Lisbon. But I feel, I've landed in a country that is a country that, I can identify and I love and I can speak the language. But it's not the same as when you land in Ponta Delgada or Fayal or Terceira or anywhere else. It just feels to me a little bit different. Let's transition over to a little bit of the stereotypes and see what your thoughts are on that. So, one of the ways that our immigration has ceased. I don't need to give you a history lesson because you all know it. So we are, even the East Coast is different, but it's the same as here. Ours to California ceased 40 years ago, to the East Coast about 25 to 30 years ago. As far as exodus, is big numbers. There are still immigrants. There are still a few families that come to California. There's still a few families that go to Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and another couple other states as well. However, the idea, of course, of the symposium is to bring a better connection between the Azores and the Azorian diaspora. And in order to this special feeling that the four of you are mentioning, to pass this on to the second, the third, and the fourth generations. Richard's daughters have it. Now we need to pass it on to his grandkids and then to their kids, and etc. Because it is a need that we have. And I just really very shortly, just recently we did, as you know, and there's actually a couple of people here that are on the documentary, a couple of the subjects, which is Richard and Maria Hortensia, and one of the subjects that we interviewed, the Rosa brothers, I think it was Noel. He said, when we go, when voltarmos, when we go back to the Azores, we're going to see this and this and this and this, and our friends that go back and forth, they have a little bit more, into the culture, and I kept on. He said that like 3 or 4 times in a different matter. Of course, we cut it for not to repeat it on the documentary. But I said to myself, how do you go back to a place you've never been? Because it was his grandfather who immigrated, but to him, he's from there. He's going to go there one day. When I just recently, when we went with a group from California, Henry Stern, who's a state senator, whose mother is Portuguese, from Azores, from Fayal. When he landed, he told me, he said, I kind of feel like this is home. So that is what we need to bring on to the third and fourth generations. But in order to do that, we kind of have to look at stereotypes. So I'm going to start this time with Laurinda. Laurinda, when you go back, do you feel, and not even going back when you go, I know you don't live in Massachusetts, you live in Virginia, but when you go to Massachusetts, very strong, you still have family there, I'm sure. When you go to Massachusetts, Rhode Island, do you feel that there still are stereotypes there about the Azores, and vice versa? When you go to the Azores, do you feel that the Azorians still have the stereotypes of the immigrants? Do you feel that people look at the immigrant as the guy who comes, with all the money and buying all the booze, and that was of a different time? But how do you, have you encountered any of those?
Yeah, Dinesh, I don't think that's the case any longer. That's certainly, I would say that maybe like 20 years ago, that was the case. But now it's television and YouTube. I mean, people go there and then they're posting videos. So you're seeing live, we're able to really see each other's lives very clearly. And I do recall, like 20 years ago, I would hear these, still comments about that. But, in my case, everyone is different. The people I know in the Azores, many have traveled, to the United States and to Canada and to Europe. So those people that I'm familiar with do have, I feel, a pretty realistic view of who we are here. That's just my experience.
Sure. And Richard, any stereotypes that you've encountered going back and forth?
I think that, well, here, I mean, I address the stereotypes of people here who might, consider, who haven't been there, like the Rosa brothers, I mean, they hear stories, but I think they have a concept still. I shouldn't say I can't speak for them, but people have a concept. I think that things are still a little backward there, that the islands are still kind of remote. They're not maybe up to the level of sophistication. I do have to add one little comment. I want to talk, when you talk about the word complicado, my other favorite, best word there is "no tá problema nenhuma." You can get everything fixed. So no tem problema. That's my favorite saying. But anyway, so I think here there is, that's why the importance of going back, the importance of connecting and seeing for oneself that the islands are not like that. I think I mentioned earlier at one time that when I left, and as a young child, of course, I don't remember, but my brothers and sisters learned to read by an oil lamp, petroleum oil lamp. There was no electricity in Flores. There were no cars. And so within my lifetime, I can go back to my little village in Fazendinha and sit around at Zedbalg's little store, and I can connect to the internet as fast as I can connect here. And that's a very, very remarkable thing. And I think that when, I think that part of that whole, again, is this level of sophistication the Azores have that people don't experience unless they've been there. I remember seeing in Ponta Delgada, San Miguel, I was astonished. I saw a Porsche Carrera going down the road. A Porsche in the Azores, that's the last thing I would have thought about. And in world-class food, there's a wonderful restaurant, a friend, Joel Vieira in Ponta Delgada, San Miguel, world-class restaurant, could be on a par with anything in the world. So the food, the culture, that I think people here, these Azorians here, particularly those even second, third generations who may not even speak a word of Portuguese, can, I think, experience a wonderful thing and change their concept, or their, what I think is still a stereotype, that all they do is eat linguiça, beans, and have a festa every couple of months, right? So there's a lot more going on there. And as I said, I think I've been very impressed with how up to date in geopolitical knowledge people are, even in those remote little villages. It's pretty astounding. So I think that those and I think the stereotypes are not as great because they are well informed. I try to watch virtually every night that I can on RTP, Notícias do Atlântico, and to try to keep up with what's going on there. But it takes a little effort. But I think if you can, those who have that enthusiasm, convey that to others. I try to put a trip together. We did one a couple of years ago. I think Denise, we took Dr. Castro to Fresno State there. I think we took 20 people, and some have never been there before, but had Azorian backgrounds. It changed their lives, wanting to just continue to go back. So stereotypes I think are probably exist to some degree, but I think they're vanishing with more and more interchange.
Hortensia, and how do you see it in Pico, and of course in all the other islands that you visit as well? Do you see, and you go back, as you said, quite often, stereotypes? Are they being abolished, or how do you see them both here and there? The community here, do we also have stereotypes about the Azores that are, things are no longer the way they were? No há carro de bois every once in a while, like there used to be.
Yes, I think I think people that have come here, some people, that have not gone back as often as others, they still remember the Azores as it was when they left. And so for that reason, they go back and I hear sometimes comments, oh, they do this, they do that. Well, they've evolved. And the Azores have evolved. You go to the Azores, you can get just about anything you want. You may not want to get it as quantities as you get them here, but you don't need big quantities of things either. So I remember when Duarte built this house, he had to buy the air fans. He had to go to Germany, but now you can buy them in the islands. So anyway, but I think because some of those people that have come and stayed here for a long time, and they didn't really keep up with the islands, and I think when they go back, at times they don't know how to deal with the change. And so I think the people from there sometimes also have a hard time dealing with those people because they've progressed and they have not. And so you hear comments like, I think we've all heard the comment, Mosca do Brown. We don't like to hear it, but I think that it has something to do with that, but I think that I feel, I go to the Azores, like as I said earlier, I feel great there. The people that I know travel here, and we travel there. So I think those stereotypes are pretty much going away, pretty much gone.
Thank you. Duarte.
Well, as some of you have said, I believe that the stereotypes are vanishing, and some of them have vanished, but they still exist to a certain extent. And I think we're both guilty on both sides of the Atlantic of perpetuating them. They happen there and they happen here. And during the other sessions at the Filaments, there were some references to Cartas da América, letters from America, which used to describe all the grandeur of California or the United States. If you do an analysis of Facebook postings in the 21st century, they are analogous to the Cartas de América. And, if you look at those and you analyze them, life is nothing but a party in California or across the United. The postings are very positive, and they always reference, our best, to say the least. And so we're perpetuating, those images, and I think people are perceiving them as, oh my, those people have it made, and there's never a bad day in the United States or in California. So those things happen. On the other side of the Atlantic, I sometimes, find that stereotypes. I can cook fairly well, and people say, "My God, you never cook in the United States. All of your meals come from Pizza Hut and McDonald's and Burger King and so forth." And I said, "I never go to those places," and they are astonished because their assumption is that all of us live and all of our meals come in a little bag, and are delivered by DoorDash or Uber Eats and so forth. And Uber Eats are now in the Azores.
That's right.
But it's interesting that those stereotypes still exist. That people don't cook. The other stereotype that I find, when I reference that I went to church or attended a religious celebration, people say, well, in the United States, people don't go to church, they're not religious, and so forth. So I met with that. And also sometimes I get met with that we're a little bit more immoral than they are. We're not as virtuous as they are, and that Americans have no values. And we know that family values in the United States and in California, are fairly strong. They may not be what they are in the Azores or were in the Azores, because the family values are also shifting in the Azores. So I see the stereotypes, they're different today, but they do exist and are manifesting themselves in different ways because the perceptions are there. And I think all of us need to work to demystify those stereotypes because they don't do anybody any good. And we're much more alike than we are not alike. our lives parallel a lot of the lives that people are living in the Azores. We have the same, some of the same benefits, but we also have the same challenges and worries. And I think until we get there, that we all share a common humanity, I think we'll have a better understanding between those of us who are Azorian and live abroad, whatever that abroad is, in the diaspora, and so forth. And the other myth that still happens a little bit to us is that we're all rich. And I'm certainly not rich, and I think not all of us consider ourselves rich. And but the assumption still exists to a certain extent that all of us are rich, and we're well off, like almost everyone in the Azores is, by Azorian standards. Correct. And by American standards. Correct. So it's different. The stereotypes are a bit different today than they were before.
Indeed. And
If
that exists. Go ahead, Rich. Yes, please do, Richard.
One
Please.
thing, Eduardo, you were spot on. Those finishing comments. I had thought about those earlier, but I kind of forgot about mentioning them. But you were right on, and that's a good stereotype.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Eduardo, and thank you all. Our last question, because it's up on 6 o'clock, and I promised you about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. And I want to stay true to that, unless there are some questions also from the audience. Please start putting them in chat if you do have.
Well, them. it's gonna be cocktail time, but I see Duarte's already started. So then
yes, I think he has. It's juice. It's juice.
Oh, juice.
Yeah. It's iced tea.
Iced tea.
kept thinking it looked like scotch to me. I kept thinking.
It's been 5 o'clock for a while. But my last question, and we can certainly expand the dialogue a little bit more, but I wanted to look at our theme, which is the Azores and the Azorian diaspora, and basically look at things that could be done for the future. We know what has happened. We know, we've talked about the stereotypes. We've talked about what is the Azorian identity, and all of you are privileged, and you're kind of, an elite in the aspects of, in many aspects, but one aspect for sure, which is the aspect of going to the Azores quite often, and not every single Azorian, and in the East Coast a little bit more, but certainly not in California. I mean, there's a plane load that goes from Oakland, with 300 Azorians every single week, but we have 350,000. So if you take that, if you take that 30 times, that's 9,000 Azorians plus the others who connect somewhere else. Even if there's 20,000 Azorians going to the Azores from California, where are the other 300,000? They don't have that opportunity, obviously, for some reasons, and some of them don't have the desire as well, and that's okay too. And the same thing in Massachusetts, there's a flight every day, and sometimes twice a day, but it's not every single Azorian's going. So what two things, two or three, would you suggest to the government of the Azores? And it's not like the government has to do anything, but or everything. I'm not saying that they have to subsidize this or that, but the Azorian government, as you know, the Portuguese government in mainland Portugal, the same. As a matter of fact, I think that it should be different. Instead of a Secretário de Estado, Secretary of State for Communities, we should do what Ireland does, which is have a minister of the diaspora at the minister level, where lots of things. It's the same thing, here in the United States. We know this, if the Secretary of Treasury was just an undersecretary of Treasury, he or she wouldn't have the power. And so in the Azores, we have a regional government, and we have a regional director. I feel that it should be a secretary for the Azorian diaspora, but that's my personal opinion. However, the Azorian government is cognizant, and at all levels, and all of you I know have contacts at all levels, whether it be at a municipal level, in one of the vilas or cidades, or at the regional government, that the diaspora is very important to the Azores. It's very important in many aspects, not just, financially, culturally, in contact with Europe. A lot of the things that can come from Europe is because we have a strong Azorian diaspora in this mega country called the United States of America. So in your perspective, what could the government of the Azores, what could they do to tackle or to have a better mutual understanding of our diaspora there and of the Azores here? Because again, and I do mean it as a compliment, obviously, that you are an elite because you have this contact. But folks, 350,000 Portuguese Americans, 90% of Azorian descent in California, 296,000 in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, 100 some odd thousand. The vast majority, I would say 70+%, don't go to the Azores or even more with the frequency that you go. What can we do to bring the Azores to especially thinking of the second and third generations, especially thinking of, Richard's daughters and grandchildren, and all of our nieces and nephews, and all of our second and third and even fourth generation, independently of their age, because we do have those third and fourth generation who are 60 and 70 years old, because we've been here for a while. So what two things, or two or three, and I'll start with Maria Hortensia. What would you like to see the government of the Azores? And I'm going to actually put it a little bit different, Maria Hortensia. If you were president of the government of the Azores, and I that would be good, Madam President. They need a woman president there in the Azores, and from Pico would be great. What two or three things would you put forth to have a better understanding between the Azores and the communities?
I would focus. I think the Azores have grown and have gotten so much more sophisticated in their approach to business and tourism and all of those things. But I would focus on innovation, and we have so many great people that have immigrated from the Azores, that have left to America, to Canada, to Bermuda, to Brazil, you name it. And these people have gone and have worked so hard. They've, gotten education. They work hard. They put a mark on the wall in the country and the companies they work for, and they have great knowledge. And if I were president of the Azores, I would go out into these countries. I would tap on these people and have them be mentors of these companies. It could be hotels, it could be restaurants, it could be tourism, it could be whatever business they have, because we have so much talent. We have so much knowledge and skill that it distribute all over the world. And we love the Azores so much that we all would be more than happy to help. And this would be a time to give back to our country. So that is, even if you didn't do anything else, but you got all these people to contribute and to, to get a seat on the table and share their knowledge, it would be wonderful. What a great thing for everybody to learn about each other and help each other. It's time to give back, and we're willing to do that.
Fantastic. And Richard, if you were president of the government of the Azores, which would be wonderful because they haven't had a president from Flores. They've all been from San Miguel. And so if you were president of the government of the Azores, what couple of things, or two or three, would you do in that as well, to make a better world for the diaspora, for us here, to bring both of us together, to bridge the two worlds?
First, I'd buy a lot of new airplanes for SATA. That would be the first thing I do. And I'd keep them on schedule so that I know that we'd have great reliability in getting people to and from the Azores. I think that itself would be a first good step. But I think a continued exposure, with the dialogue with the diaspora is here. I mean, things like what you're doing. My hat's off to you for the wonderful things you've done, at PBBI at Fresno State. I mean, you've awakened, I think, just with your efforts, a whole new group of people just by the kinds of things that we've done over the last several years at Fresno State. Unfortunately, with some of the setbacks of COVID in this last year, but that has been great in first of all, making that relationship, that connection. And then from there is that desire. I come back to those Rosa brothers who've never been there before, but really, should go and want to go. And I think, looking at pulling in the talent that we've said, and maybe encouraging investments as well. Some investment. I just saw an article today on Travel and Leisure, American Express's Travel and Leisure, where there are small villages throughout Italy that are losing population, and as such are making these homes available. You go to a lot of those villages, you see abandoned homes, and but if keeps buying all the houses in peak, you'll take care of that problem. But I think encouraging those to do that, to maybe have a vacation home. People desire these wonderful places. That's something I think they can work on, to connect that from the standpoint of the Portuguese government, and then supporting things like PBI, putting more money into where the diaspora, where what they say, the road tire meets the road, and that's where you come in, and these kinds of seminars. And I think you build that spirit. There is. I know that in the last couple of years, I've encountered a lot of Azorians, second, third generation, who are excited because they've heard a lot about what was going on there. And I think, and that's with Portuguese government. And I think here, I think there is a sense that the diaspora really does care about the Azores. They care about their future. They care about their well-being. And so cooperation with our government and resources that we could bring to the table, filling up the air base again back in Terceira would be a wonderful thing. Staffing that, so one of the great logistical areas for the world that we could be a part of, bringing American resources to help the economy of all of the Azores. That needs to be done. And we're fortunate because we have several very influential members of the U.S. Congress who are Portuguese, who understand that, who have a love for the country. They've all been there. They've all visited. They're all connected. And I think that moving forward, we can, that would be something that if we could get Lige back to full strength would be a great thing as well.
Indeed, and I'm glad you mentioned politics, because we have State Senator Michael Rodrigues, who's following us on Facebook and just put a very nice comment. And Michael Rodrigues is State Senator from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, who has done a wonderful job and is always cognizant and to take time to follow our panel. Thank you so much, Senator Michael Rodrigues, good friend of ours. Laurinda, President of the government of the Azores, you probably could be, of all five of us here, you could be the next president, because you're from San Miguel. There's a tradition there. And so you could be the next president of the Azores much easier than the rest of us could. So, Madam President, what two things would you put forth to bring these two worlds together?
I would love it. It's not going to happen, but I would love it. I'll try to encourage my daughter. I would start a television program, not start, but have a program for RTP specific to the diaspora, focusing on, so here, having like an Oprah show where it's focused on Azorian Americans, where, that they can talk about their success story, and reciprocal, and the same there, and have that focus on the various industries, what's going on in the Azores today in terms of innovation and business. There's a lot of amazing things happening in technology and science, and those students in universities are doing amazing things. Sharing, statistics and data, sharing that with us in the United States, in Canada, in Bermuda, and everywhere. That certainly increased the understanding and the knowledge and the sharing of knowledge, and keeping that dialogue going. And certainly having a conference, every other year, where what a wonderful way, right, to have that exchange and continue that exchange. And of course, focusing on the universities. So as the president of the Azores, I would start with a message of welcoming and talking about the mission. Why is this important to us? Why do we want to maintain these alliances between our people? We share a common spirit. We are Portuguese, but Azorians are a special, unique people because we come from all over Europe. Like, I have Italian ancestry and Dutch, make Flemish, my ancestry. So we are unique. in that way. And we have a unique spirit. And, you know, that should be celebrated and nurtured, if you will.
Indeed, and that's a good point to have much more awareness in the press about Azorian Americans. That's something that the Azorian press does not do a very good job at times. We talked about that actually in the prior panel, where we only if someone wins a Nobel Prize or something do we get coverage in the Azorian press, or if someone well known that was a president of a festa dies. Duarte, so President Duarte Silva, you got a bit of a hill to climb, being from São Jorge, being president of the government of the Azores, and the rest of us as well. Laurinda has an easier job, but President, if you were, what in essence, what couple, 2 or 3 things would be important from your
If
perspective?
Laurinda becomes president, I'll become one of her secretaries. How's
Okay,
that?
there you
Is
go.
that good enough? And then all of us.
I'll take it.
Basically, my recommendation and to the government of the Azores basically parallels Maria. And also touches on Richard's, because I really believe that the government of the Azores is missing a golden opportunity for not consulting or engaging with members of its immigrants diaspora. It's basically the same idea, especially when it comes to, you know, island investment and island development. So I really think that the government of the Azores, if I was the president of the government of the Azores, I would establish a bilateral committee that would involve, you know, half or a representation from the Azores, and they absolutely would have to have somebody from São Jorge, and from the, you know, the different, you know, diaspora, you know, not only from the United States but across, you know, the world, and bring those best minds, as Maria described. I mean, we are here in California in every single sector of our society, from Silicon Valley to the medical field, to the technology, to the bio technical fields, and I think we could be a wealth of support and providing helping the Azores develop its vision for making, you know, the Azores what it needs to be, and to keep its you know, everyone now in the Azores that is coming to get a PhD in the United States never returns to the Azores. Getting a master's degree in the United States, they never return to the Azores. They go to Germany, they go to England. I've been on a lot of dissertation committees and none of them have returned to the Azores. And I believe that we really believe that we can develop the infrastructure where those individuals can be engaged. And as Richard said, that base, Lages, is prime, it's ripe for a laboratory. Climate change, what a better place to have in the middle of the world, to have all the scientists that are working in climate change. That place is ripe for a laboratory that would, you know, bring all the biochemists and everyone else involved and into the laboratory. I can't believe that it's not there already, because it's the spot. And I've talked, you know, about this with, you know, some of my scientific friends, and it's prime. The second one, recommendation, I'm going to take 2, it would be in the tourism sector. I believe that the Azores needs to strive to continue to be authentic in its tourism planning and not begin to duplicate the kind of tourist traps that are, you know, beginning to appear in the Azores. And today's tourism, be them, you know, us, you know, the descendants of the Portuguese or the Azorian immigrants, they want, you know, authentic engagement, authentic activities to experience what their grandparents experienced and what, you know, every day, you know, Azorians do experience today. So, you know, tourism in any part of the world is no longer a spectator sport, but it's active engagement in exploring different aspects of local culture and local way of life. When I go to Vietnam, I participate in a very real ways in a lot of meaningful activities, and I learned so much from participating, not just viewing or being a spectator, but engaging in those activities and being alongside those individuals that are creating. I was thinking the Azores, cheese making. I mean, wouldn't you like to be, if you are in Saint George, wouldn't you like to be and spend 3 hours and learn how cheese is made? Weaving and fazendo films in Saint George as well. Fishing, and the ocean is all around us. Wine making pastries. Wouldn't you like to have a class on making Dona Amélias in Terceira, or queijadas da Graciosa in Graciosa, and so forth? Pastéis de nata are the rage in the United States. The New York Times is writing about it. I mean, we can offer all these authentic activities to our tourism, be they coming from Germany or England or whatever part of Europe or the United States, and us, because most of us did not acquire those skills. Maria, as my father made the wine, can I make the wine? Can Maria make the wine? I don't think so. It would be even worse than the wine that my father made. But I really would enjoy to being in Pico, and because Pico is the place where where a lot of great wine is being made. So I would like to spend a day at Terra de Lava and engage in making the wine, and being in the laboratory and see how they taste the wine. It would be an engaging day in Pico. So I really believe that between bringing more of bring everyone together to provide the advice and create an advisory board, an advisory committee, a bilateral committee would be a great idea, and then to keep its tourism authentic as possible.
Indeed.
I would like to
Please.
add one other point, and that's an excellent, Duarte. I see that occurring in all these magazines, particularly in Italy and France, where people want to go and experience.
Yep.
But I think in one of the things that we have is that, the Azores is so unique and it's so beautiful. And I've always tell people it's paradise undiscovered until you discover it. And once you do, and we've had so many cultures, you see the Europeans coming. I mean, and even in Flores, there's such a huge amount of Germans have come in. They've come in to hike for a few times. They've fallen in love with the country. They're coming in. They're buying some of those houses and they're setting up their paradise. And I think that we need to expose this diaspora that has not been there to this paradise.
Absolutely.
And then tie in with those things, because if not, we may lose some of that to these other cultures. We need to take control and get it back ourselves.
Indeed, Richard, that's a very good point. I mean, we have enough diaspora, enough second, third, fourth, fifth generation, even. We have enough diaspora in the United States that we certainly can keep those SATA planes when they run. I do agree with you, but we certainly can keep those SATA planes running all the time. We just have to do a little bit of what Duarte said, which is develop these packages. The sons or daughters, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren of immigrants don't want to go back, and they don't have the knowledge of the country that all of you have after all these years of going back, and they want everything done. They want, a place to stay, and not just, a unique place. And there is the lack of packages, and packages that include those things that all of you mentioned, learn how to make a caçoila in Pico, or an alcatra in Terceira, or learn how to make all of those things, and a traditional dance, and all of these things that are important that the second and third generation wants to, and the Azores kind of assumes that because they're of Azorian descent, that because their parents or their grandparents or great-grandparents came from the Azores, that they know everything there is to be known about the Azores. But they don't. They assume, well, they all go eat sopas at the hall. No, they don't. I mean, California is a huge place, and although we have 150 festas, there are many places where there aren't any festas, or where people are even in Tulare, where we have 6,000 Portuguese people. Not everyone goes to the hall, especially the second, third, and fourth generation. So there is this wealth of diaspora tourism that could really be important for the Azores. And if we can just get basically I don't know about one, but maybe 2 or 3 Azorians to do what Maria Hortensia is doing, all the houses will be bought up by, Azorian descendants, and we wouldn't have to worry about other international people buying those. So,
Okay, Maria, next
for
up,
sure,
next
and for
next
sure
up,
there
I
are
wanna learn
no,
how to make
for
the
sure
caldo
here,
fish.
yeah, and for sure here, there are no lapas.
no,
And
that's true. That's
There's
true.
lapas every day.
you got it
There's
every
lapas.
single day.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. It's been enlightening. It's been, I knew I would not be disappointed with this panel. That's why you were asked. I've been looking forward to this panel ever since we put it together. Thank you for accepting my invitation. I owe you a debt of gratitude, and if I can ever be of service, there's not much I can do. But if I can ever be of service to any of the 4 of you, I'll be more than happy to. Thank you all for, in one way or another, as all of you have been promoters, even Lauren in the East Coast of PBBI and everything that we're doing at Fresno State. And we hope to continue this for many, many years. And hopefully next year, we can have the Filaments of the Atlantic Heritage in person at Fresno State. And you're all invited, of course, to attend, and we can actually share a drink with Duarte and share, some of the hospitality that that Fresno State does have, for those of you who don't know, and we can learn, and that's hopefully what we will also do, is learn from other communities as well. So again, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe, and thank you for your Azorian identity in America. Thank you for being great Azorians. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you, Dinesh.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you
you all
to the
very
panel.
much.
All.
It was
Thank you
so
all.
enjoyable.